Overcoming your negative internal critic or that negative voice inside your head that's always criticizing you can feel like an impossible task. I know that intimately because not only have I helped many clients overcome their inner critic that seemed too challenging to overcome, I've also found ways to overcome and effectively manage my own internal critic. And I'm someone who genuinely used to hate myself and for 20 years struggled with severe depression and really often thought about no longer living because I hated myself so much. But through these techniques that I will teach you today, I have learned how to silence that inner critic effectively, because it does come up sometimes because that's a part of being human, and how to work with it well rather than feeling like I'm in a constant uphill battle trying to prove my worth to this inner critic. And up until this point, you probably did what I did for a long time, which is try to contradict or argue with that inner critic. So maybe that inner critic comes up and it starts criticizing you, saying that you're lazy or you're not good enough. And you go, oh no, I have to fight this. I have to say I'm good enough because I'm worthy, I'm lovable, I'm a good parent, I'm a good person, whatever you might say to yourself. And you might just want to argue with that voice. And I completely understand wanting to do that. I did it myself for a long time. But unfortunately, fighting your inner critic only fuels the message that I'm not good enough still. Because when you criticize the critic, you're fighting fire with fire. What you want to do instead that's more effective, I found, is really nurture and feed the kind, loving part of you rather than fighting the inner critic, which still kind of comes from a critical place. You're not good enough because you have a critical voice inside of you. But no, actually, you're just human. So instead, when that inner critic arises, try to work with it in a kind way. Notice it. Oh, I'm feeling really insecure right now. That's okay. That's a part of being human. For example, I've been having a lot of insecurities come up as I've made the commitment to consistently show up here on YouTube. It's important to me. I want to help more people. And yet, as a therapist, I kind of get to hide in my private practice. And so putting myself out there more is making some insecurities come up. But when that voice was coming up really fiercely the other night, I, had that initial urge to fight it. But instead I was like, oh, of course I'm feeling insecure. It's scary to do new things. It's scary. And in fact, I'm actually being courageous. So I was really kind of cheerleading myself. The fact that I was insecure about doing YouTube was just highlighting that I'm doing something courageous. I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. And so the discomfort and the insecurity that's arising is a feature, not a flaw, because I'm expanding and I'm growing. And so I encourage you the next time or when your inner critic comes up consistently, come to it with a kinder voice. Validate, oh, it makes sense I'm feeling not good enough right now. That interaction I just had with my friend made me feel really insecure when I said I didn't like that movie that they like. And now I'm wondering if they're judging me. And just validate it. You can be kind to yourself when insecurity arises. It's a human emotion. And then the next thing you want to do when that inner critic arises is you can also get curious with it. So, for example, your inner critic is going to constantly label things as good or bad. It's constantly deciding if you're good enough or not good enough. For example, there's probably a whole bunch of choices that your inner critic has decided make you good enough. For example, eating healthy, going to the gym, getting a degree, working hard. And when you step outside of those lines that the inner critic has created for you, then all of a sudden you're bad, you're not good enough, you're unlovable, you're unworthy. And instead of looking at the world through this black and white, all or nothing, good or bad lens, this curiosity allows for the truth, which is that life is gray. For example, if you don't go to the gym right now, like one night, that's just a choice. It doesn't make you good or bad. And you can be kind with that part, it makes sense I don't want to go to the gym tonight. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm going to focus on getting some rest. You can be kind. And then if there's a pattern where, it's important to you to go to the gym, you've decided that that's important, and yet you keep finding like maybe for 2 weeks, you just can't motivate yourself to go, get curious with that part instead. Ask yourself kindly, why don't I want to go to the gym? It doesn't make me good or bad, actually. So why don't I? And maybe you'll hear, if you give you some space and curiosity, that you find the gym really overstimulating, perhaps. It's maybe an environment with a lot going on and it overstimulates your senses, feels kind of harsh, especially after a long day at work. And you can then, with that, new information, make new decisions that are more aligned for you based on your goals. For example, you might decide, yes, movement is still important to me, but if I don't like the gym, maybe I can dance at home, I can take walks, I can jog, I can do yoga, I can do Pilates at home. There's so many videos on YouTube. And you can instead find a path that's healthier for you, that's more aligned with your true goals. Because while people are often afraid of losing their inner critic, my clients tell me that they're afraid that they're going to lose their motivation in life. Research shows that it's kind people who are kind to themselves, that actually are able to tolerate setbacks, tolerate failure in life, and stay consistent towards meeting their goals longer term than people who are hard on themselves. When you're hard on yourself, it's like a harsh parent, and eventually you might just give up because you feel like you can never win. And so being kind to yourself actually motivates you longer to accomplish those important goals for yourself. And finally, to overcome this negative critic, while some of this work is internal, like I've been talking about, there's also a part that's external, because there are messages you've picked up that have created and fed your inner critic. So maybe that's been, friends or family unwittingly have sent you a message that there's certain things that make you good or bad, like having a certain body weight, having a certain type of job, having a certain type of relationship, for example. And those voices then feed that inner critic. And it could be completely unintentional. It also comes from society, social media. And it's really going to be important for you to overcome your inner critic, that you set boundaries around the things that feed that negative inner voice. You might, for example, unfollow accounts that make you feel bad, that bring up this sense of comparison. Maybe you're trying to motivate yourself, but it just makes you feel crappy. Like maybe it is important to you to, be physically fit. And so you follow fitness influencers, but whenever you see their posts about their bodies or their diets, whatever it might be, you just feel bad about yourself. That's not actually motivating. Unfollow those accounts. For me, I had to do it around people talking about special formulas for business success, money manifestors, because it really made me feel like where I was at in my own life, with my own relationship with money, in my own career, while there were many things I was comfortable and happy and safe about, it made me feel not good enough. So I had to unfollow, unsubscribe to newsletters, all of that. And, other times there's people in your life who, kind of send you messages that feed that inner critic. And you can talk to them about maybe removing those topics from your discussions so that you can feel safer, so you're not feeding that inner critic. For example, if you have a parent that's constantly on you about when you're going to get married, you can say, hey, I'll let you know when I find someone that I'm serious about, that I'm really happy about. But for now, let's not talk about my dating life because it just makes me feel pressured. And I know it's going to happen in its own due time. You can set that boundary with someone. The biggest turning moment in my life when it came to setting boundaries, I used to be kind of like a doormat, was actually telling my mom many, many years ago now that my body was not open for discussion. It didn't matter if she was going to be complimenting it or criticizing it. I didn't want to hear it. That anytime she talked about my body, it really triggered me. It triggered a lot of shame and overeating. And it just made me feel bad about myself, like not good enough. And so I said, hey, let's not talk about my body. And then finally, you might need to limit your time with some relationships because there's some people in your life, maybe it's a critical parent, especially if you have complex trauma, this could be the case, that no matter what you do, you can't satisfy them. They're always criticizing you. They're always unhappy with something you did. They're always guilting you. And you might need to limit time with that person if you're going to overcome that inner voice, because it's just feeding that inner critic too much when you spend time with them. It's really important to set these boundaries because this work around overcoming your inner critic isn't just internal, it is external as well. If you want more support in understanding your inner critic, what it's like, where it comes from, the triggers for it, those relationships or that you might need to set boundaries around, there's journal prompts in the description. There's also a linked article with more articles that have different journal prompts so you can feed that kinder part inside of you, including some affirmations. And if you want support setting those boundaries with other people, communicating with love, but also firmly to protect yourself so you can feed that kinder part. Setting boundaries, by the way, feeds that kind part. I encourage you to check out my book, Setting Boundaries, 100 Ways to Protect Yourself, Strengthen Your Relationships, and Build the Life You Want, starting now. I'm sending so much love for this process. I truly want to hear about kind of the ups and downs. If you have any questions, how this process is working for you, please leave a comment. I love hearing from you. And I know it is possible to overcome this inner critic because I've experienced it myself. And I can authentically say today that I truly love myself, even though insecurities naturally arise. I just know how to cope with them well. And I know that it doesn't define me. So again, with love, I'll see you next time. Bye.